it took me a little while to come around to the concept of community because as a growth marketer, you directly correlate every action that you're doing to a revenue number. At the end of the day, that's your North Star metric. You want to reverse engineer everything and say, okay, paid's going to drive this much in revenue, SEO organic is going to drive this much in revenue, like all that.
Andrew, it's so wonderful to be here with you. Thanks for joining LeadTail TV and myself, and I'm just looking forward to this.
Absolutely. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invite.
You got it. You got it. Well, why don't we just jump right in? I would love to talk with you about just first of all, Orbit, because you are a community platform and community growth platform, I should say. And community is one of my, if not my favorite topic in the world because of especially where we're at right now. We're just talking off camera about community in different places of the world and how we can build it. But you have Orbit has a different kind of view on community. So I'd love to talk with you about that. What is community growth and how is Orbit defining that strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. So great question. So our positioning, as you see, is like community growth platform. And a lot of times people are like, what does that mean? You're not the core community platform, right? So we're not Discord, we're not Discourse, we're not Slack, where the communities are actually built, but we're that layer that goes on top of it. So we're able to, a simplified version, right? And if we were starting at the very basis of, Orbit's creation, it was like, we're the analytics or intelligence platform that goes on top of that, right? So we're able to understand how many people are engaging with you, communicate with them. But we thought, just being like, we don't want to lean completely into like a BI tool. We want to be something that actually helps people, get direct impact. So with that, it's the growth platform because you can take all these metrics and all this data about your community, and then you can layer on actions or activities on there. So, maybe you want to send them a Twitter DM to invite them to an event that you're hosting or a meetup or something like that. So there's all these different levers that we've kind of built in there to take it from just intelligence and data reporting to let's take some action on this and actually, implement these learnings.
It strikes me that, we don't realize how many platforms we're all on, and yet because now it's kind of like become table stakes, but we spend most of our day, and I know I do this, like one minute I'm on Twitter and the next minute I'm on LinkedIn and then the next minute I'm in my Facebook group and then the next minute I'm in Slack and the next minute I'm like, and so what you're saying is that you're giving, I think, a place to grow from a one central source of truth. Is that kind of what I'm picking up on?
Yeah, exactly. So one of the other phrases that we like to use internally is we're the mission control for your community, right? So you could have your community, spread out amongst different things. Like maybe you have an active following on Twitter, and so you're engaging with people there. But then you have your own kind of like invite-only Discord community or Discourse community. So you have another group there. And then maybe you, for some reason, you wanted a Slack and a Facebook group as well. And so you have all these different groups. You can integrate all that inside of Orbit. And with there, you can see how each, you can kind of follow from a marketing standpoint, that digital body language, right? You can see what they're doing and how they're interacting on all these different platforms and centralize it inside of one, platform. But it's not direct competition with like HubSpot or Salesforce because we do integrate with those. And so from the marketer's standpoint, the marketer is looking at there and it's like, ooh, I can use this lead scoring data, even though that's not what it is. And, you don't talk about that in community, but I come from growth. And so that always kind of jumps into my head. Ooh, these are some lead scoring factors that I could plug into HubSpot, and that can give me richer data about that individual.
Oh, I love that you can track the actual metrics of a community, because that today is not something that most communities really allow for, because we don't see them as true communities, or maybe the platform doesn't see them the way that we want to. And you're giving us a chance. You're saying that there should be a chance. And as a marketer, if you don't have a KPI or something to measure against, then what do you, yes, I love that we help the world and we're giving back, but we also need to be .coms, not just .orgs. Having KPIs is brilliant. How do you use those to your benefit?
Yeah, absolutely. So One of the things, this is a little bit of like a creation story of Orbit and kind of where we're getting to, and this all leads up to the metrics. But before Orbit was actually a business, it came out with kind of like a thesis statement of what community is. So that true like community-led growth mindset in that, how do you build a community? What are the things that we're looking at and how do we define that? And so we've created orbitmodel.com. And so on there, it goes into a lot of depth about how you actually build communities and then how it plugs in to all the different functional areas. So what happened was they put out this thesis, and our CEO and our co-founders, they were in the DevRel space, which is very much like open source, very much into community building, and they were approached multiple times of how do we take that and actually make it real, you know? So basically, how do we take the philosophy here and productize it so that there's a tool that we could actually utilize? And that's what they did. So basically, their community pushed them into building this out. And so that's how we got our first initial users, is everybody jumped on there. It's like, oh, I want to take that. I want to learn about Orbit Model, the different like levels and scoring that you built out, and actually have that dashboard or KPI metrics to show. And our CEO and as Orbit, we talk about this a lot, is, you know, everybody has a go-to-market strategy, right? But there's not a go-to community strategy. And there's some differences inside there. So we think of community as basically a forcing factor or a forcing function of impacting like all the different aspects of an organization. So you have sales, success, marketing, hiring. And within the Orbit model, we actually break down different metrics and ways that you can link that back. So for example, like sales, you know, community qualified growth, you know, or I mean, a community qualified lead is something that we look at. And so you look at things like, you know, this user, this who within the organization is actually using the product within your like community, and then there's different like activity levels within inside there, and then who just self-selects and raises their hands and say, hey, I'm already using the free plan. I'd really love to move into a higher level. How do I do that? So they reach out, they're in our Discord, they reach out, they raise their hands, they talk to our community manager, and our community manager is like, hey, here's our AE, and they pass over all the different engagements and everything that they've had activities, and then they're able to just, you know, convert. And so there's things like deals closed from community, but this is broken down into all the different aspects. So like I said, success, marketing, so forth, and separating sometimes that community or the go-to community strategy versus the go-to marketing strategy is also important. So meetups might not necessarily want to have a rev leader looking at a meetup where you're trying to build a community, because a rev leader, and even me, I'm guilty of this, back growth marketing, right? When they show up, how many can we close right there? How many trials are you going to get from there? You know, what are we going to do? That doesn't really align fully with like the long tail strategy that's involved in community. And so that's where you have a little bit of difference and maybe not be directly reporting under like a rev leader on there. There's ways that it impacts, but having that separation is also really important.
Oh my God. I'm having like goosebump after goosebump after goosebump here, because there's so much that we spread ourselves thin
Yeah,
doing to try and maintain one community,
right.
and seeing and reporting the value
Mm,
of what community
yep,
is so hard for every community manager out there, other than
absolutely.
you guys should get in here and see what's happening. You can't do that. You can't get
Right.
everybody to go, you should come in here. They have full-time jobs. They can't see
Yep.
what's happening, but they're the magic of what's happening in all of
Mm,
these is the brilliance behind the analytics of what you're talking
right.
about. You know, it's such an incredible thing to be able to do. And what I'm also curious about is just even in your own background, you know, you are, as I understand it, you're in growth marketing, or have been in growth marketing for quite a while. Do you see any crossover between the concepts and tactics of growth marketing and this new strategy of growth community, or growth through community?
Right, right. So yeah, I'd say that I've built my career on growth marketing, and it's something that, you know, I'm always going to be passionate about and I'm still heavily involved in. But it took me a little while to come around to the concept of community, because as a growth marketer, you know, you directly correlate every action that you're doing to a revenue number. At the end of the day, that's your North Star metric. You want to reverse engineer everything and say, okay, paid's going to drive this much in revenue, SEO organic's going to drive this much in revenue, like all that. And it was really my first introduction when I worked at Agorapulse. I was the VP of growth marketing there.
Oh,
And yeah, and we brought on a community leader. I believe he was director of community at IBM. And he came over and joined us, and I was talking to him, and my brain just couldn't wrap around. I'm like, I get community, kind of. I'm thinking of it as like, these are brand evangelists, eventually they're going to convert and they're going to, pay us. But it was working with him and understanding the longer term, aspects of it, that it's going to take 6 to 12 months for us to launch this program. And then we're really building true relationships, one-to-one relationships, and eventually at scale. And so that always like, I'm like, wow, okay, that's what a marketer's always wanted to do, is one-to-one personalization and language at scale, because we broadcast our messages. And so I have, like I'd say, evolved a bit from just the growth mindset into connecting that to community and really understanding that, a lot of just educational material and top of funnel content, and really being there as a human, and not just like a number, creating those human interactions. At the end of the day, that's what matters. And so there's definitely a lot of overlap there. And I think as a growth marketer, I've learned a lot on, okay, this isn't just a lead that's converting into an MQL, that's converting to an SQL, and eventually, yes, we get the revenue. This is a real human going through this, and how do we best support them? Because at the end of the day, even if they don't become a customer, we've built a great relationship. They're in our community, and there's always word of mouth, and they might not be in funnel right now, but they're referring other people that end up converting. And it's like, oh, and that's just good business at the end of the day. So there is a lot of overlap.
Well, so my background in the book that I wrote is called Human to Human, and so you're
Right.
like really digging into the thing that matters the most,
Mm,
which is to me anyway, which is
yeah.
the layers of relationship that we're building, and to be able to do that
Right.
digitally, especially when we're all remote, or most people are remote,
Yeah.
and we're moving into this digital relationship even more so than we were.
Yeah.
And we said that we were there 2 years ago. We said we're there 1 year ago, and now all of a sudden
Right.
a pandemic breaks out and we're like, oh, it's human to Zoom to human. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the whole life that we lead now. So, and
Absolutely.
to have community built into this digital, platform that we all are a part of now is really important. But how do we grow and scale it, and still have good quality relationships, even deeper relationships?
Right.
I'm sure you ran into this at Agorapulse, and as well how you see community today. And I'd love to
Yeah.
know, like, what is this? How do we move things forward so that we can deepen the relationship? Do you have any thoughts on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So we all like models and frameworks, right? It's the easiest way for us to understand, okay, this correlates to this leads to this. And so in the orbit model, we use language that we've created that all is like space kind of focus, right? So you have gravity, and that's where you really understand if people are moving closer to you or they're moving outside of your orbit. And then within that, we have different orbit levels. And so within there, we understand, okay, this person based off of, and there's all these different, I'd say, core factors that we built into each, level, but they're not necessarily, applicable to like everybody under the sun. You have to spend the time and understand who is your community. Why did you even build a community? I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole, but we call them like the 3 Ps. There's different types of communities, right? There's product communities, practice communities, and communities of play. And so there's all these different things, and it's understanding what you're focusing on, what that end goal is, and then building out those metrics specific to your levels of orbit, right? And so you move from the outside orbit level 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And those are easy ways for us just to get a mental snapshot of these people are engaging with us. And these are the factors within each one of these that are increasing their love for us, throughout all these different places. And so like orbit level 0 is really those core people. They're mostly like team members, founding members, employees. And orbit level 1 are really those early adopters and customers that are our brand evangelists and out there. And they don't necessarily even have to be using our product. Sometimes when they're orbit level 1, they're just huge advocates of us, and maybe it just didn't, align with them at that time. But they're still in our discourse. We're still educating them. We're helping them. We're supporting them. So that's kind of how we track it internally, is through these orbit levels.
That's fascinating. So I love that because it's kind of how we peel the onion
Right.
as we're getting closer to each thing in our life and get closer to the center. So I just imagine the orbit of being on the outside and moving
Right.
into the center. If I'm picking up this concept correctly, and how
Yeah.
you're starting to become closer and closer and really like to the soft core
Yeah.
center of the onion, which is like the
Absolutely.
juicy good stuff, right? Like, and
Yeah.
that's where you want to be. And when you're there, there's you almost built like trust at such a good
Yeah.
level that they'll go out and be an influencer for you or do
Yep.
something that's even beyond a relationship that you would normally have. And
Yeah.
how do you is it, I guess what I'm trying to ask
Mm.
uh, is there a difference there between how you see metrics versus revenue,
Mm.
like what, like the difference between this matters as a relationship versus this matters as like a revenue stream for us?
Right, right. So I mean there's different things that we look at and it's different on I mean again we go back to the one-to-one relationship, right? So there's some people that you could draw a direct line. They went through like a normal, funnel thing. They had the problem, they jumped on there, they started engage, they joined our discourse, they started talking to us, they went through like a freemium, product, they tried it out, and then they're like, oh, I really like this new feature. So what they did is they actually write an article for us about a new feature and then they share it with us. They're like, oh, we're huge advocates. And then they, converted. And because they shared the article, it's like, oh, look, we get referral traffic and everything like that that's coming to our site because of this individual that we didn't necessarily, I mean, we weren't forcing them to do it. We're not paying them for this exposure. It's just natural user generated content. And there's all these different paths that can happen. The beauty of having some tracking and in the digital age is we can see those different touch points. And some things happen really fast. Some things, 6 months, a year down the road, somebody wrote an article that we didn't even know about. And hey, we had somebody sign up now because of that who we impacted years, ago. So there is revenue correlation, but I wouldn't say that this is like the cleanest attribution model that you can go through. But then you can also, as marketers, argue about it, which attribution model is the best. Should we go first touch, last touch, linear, all that fun stuff. So this is just another data point that you can bring in and use that and say, okay, this is impacting us in the long term. And over time, you start seeing that compounding effect of community and all these new paths that people have self-selected, to come in and join us.
Mm-hmm. There, it reminds me that there's a lot going into a lot of different places, and it's really
Right,
tough to find the needles in the haystack.
right.
Like the things that really like come through, like when somebody shares something that's so profound and
Yeah,
everyone missed it,
yep.
or something that someone says like how your software helped
Mm,
me to achieve this incredible thing that I overcame that I never had been able to, and everyone misses it.
right,
And
right.
like, so how help me understand, like, how do you stop missing all of the needles in the haystack that start to become the thing that actually creates the bigger thing, which is why we're in business?
Yeah, yeah, right. So let's say somebody shares something on Twitter that they had this great interaction with us, and this helped, solve a pain point. So we use our own tool, right? And so we know who's engaging with us. And so we're able to say, this is one activity that moves them closer into, another level of orbit, right? So they moved from maybe orbit level 3 to now they're orbit level 2 because of that. And then they went ahead and shared it inside of discourse. And then they decided to include it in a newsletter. Now we couldn't track the newsletter, but somebody mentioned, because we can't put tagging in somebody else's newsletter, right? But somebody else brought it up to us and mentioned, and it's like, oh, this all connects back to this one individual, and we start seeing that individuals interactions with us and what they've done over time, and that allows us to know, okay, this person is really engaged with us. It didn't get a lot of promotion at that one time, but we can reach back out to that person and say, hey, from a marketer standpoint, that's out in the wild. Do you mind if we take a screenshot of that and use that in maybe retargeting ads, for people further down, in the funnel? It's like, yeah, we didn't ask for it, we didn't pay for it. They're like, They shared it. We were able to track that and see that that happened, and we're not being creepy, right? Because they're already engaged with us and we have that relationship, and we want to get their permission if they're good with it. So that's like one small use case of how, you can track this, and then that retargeting ad using this social proof drives additional revenue. So there's all these secondary benefits that you can, take from that community interaction.
Wow. So attribution wise, it really does start to bring in the CRM element of understanding the relationship and how it
Mm,
all plays a part so that you can attribute it all the way back along the storyline of where it fits and
yeah,
who fits where and all that kind of stuff, which is the mecca for marketers. And
absolutely.
as you're looking at that attribution and trying to, you know, let me actually shift gears here and
Yeah, yeah.
also understanding like how you we know how you now correlate it, but is that now a human process or is it
Mm,
an AI process or is like will it be machine learning? Like there's so like for companies that have so much data,
right.
like that just seems like a lot of tagging to go
Oh,
through and
yeah.
go, oh my God, how am I going to keep up with this is my full job just to tag all this stuff.
Right, right. So when communities are being built out, they're at different stages, right? And so inside of Orbit, there is tagging, there's event tracking and all that, but you need to set up, like with any tool, the basic, I'd say like guardrails that you're looking at. And so then you can have those applied. But it is, I mean, it's a manual process, at first until there's enough understanding of there that it's like, okay, yeah, boom. This person did this, that makes sense. Moving within the Orbit levels, you set up those activities and we help you. We have concierge onboarding and all that. We help you set that up at the beginning so that that starts moving. We know these activities and what's going to happen, and so they move throughout your Orbit level. So that's not something you have to, manually do, but our team is always there to kind of help you through that. There has been associations, saying that we're like the CRM for community, but we're not trying to just get into that space, right? That's why we're partnered and integrating with HubSpot and Salesforce, because that's what they do. This is a separate area of community that isn't being plugged in, to HubSpot. And other teams besides your community team can have access, and that's how it plugs into, for marketers and for salespeople, inside of HubSpot. Eventually, it might make sense to move them inside of Orbit too and like look at what's happening there. But right now, we primarily just focus on community managers who are running these teams.
There's it's so good to hear that it's technology and humans working together. That it makes so much sense, especially when we're talking about a human, conversation or humans talking to other humans, and so there's just so much that goes into that, and to be able to also think of what is the response that I want to give here, and thinking through all that, and building rapport, knowing what to say. We've seen many fails out
Yep.
there from companies or heck them not replying at all.
Yep.
And so, how do you see engagement from the brand becoming more consistent, more human, more
Yeah.
creative, more funny, more humorous, more emotional, so that the people go, wow, this really is a real person, and it's not
Yeah.
like the brand just doing their templated, this is what we say, and
Right.
robotic kind of thing. So how do you
Yeah.
see that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I do have to say that I'm like a tech nerd, especially when it gets into like GPT-3 and machine learning and all that. And there's so many cool things coming out from that. But it is also, founded on, the humans who wrote the code, right? And that's with everything that we do. So in community, you can't ever take the human out of it, because that just defeats the entire purpose of having a community and having one-to-one relationships. No matter how smart GPT-3 becomes or like the next evolution of it, you need to have that human engagement. Sure, from the brand side, we set up our brand voice and our brand guidelines and everything, and so we do have that tone that we're trying to use and represent us. But that's kind of built into who the community is and who we are as an organization. So I think as long as you understand who you are and you approach it that way, you're still going to need the human. You still need, the community manager who's engaging one-to-one with people, who's responding, the social media manager that comes from a different, perspective, but also you can think of it, they are engaging with a community and building a community, even though it's kind of like a different, focus and different title. But it's all about the human aspect. And I think we've as a society, we're definitely heavily indexing on the AI and machine learning aspect. I think maybe too far, that we need to just bring it back to, yes, technology is a tool, but at the end of the day, it's the humans, and that one-to-one connection that's really building longer term brands and relationships. And that's so crucial.
Amen. Amen. That's all I'm going to say is just
I'll step
amen.
off the podium
You're
now.
go. I'm like you keep going because that's where I'm at too. I really believe in it, and sometimes we get into this the revenue side of what you're talking about, because once you cross over into a transactional relationship, then they see it coming a mile away, unless there's a way for us to work together because we have entered that orbit, if
Yeah.
you will. And so, see, I'm learning. And so, if we could, what does that look like? How do you correlate community and revenue?
Yeah.
And really seeing that, and I know it's not the whole thing for why we exist, but how
Yeah.
do you correlate that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a great phrase that our founder, Patrick Woods, came out with is that software is no longer sold, it's adopted. And that also goes to I think the rallying cry of product-led growth as well. It's, you know, people are moving to where the decision maker doesn't have to be, sold by, a salesperson anymore. They don't have to jump on that demo. They don't have to be like hard pressed on converting. They have all the decisions, at their fingertips, right? And so even on like a PLG side, there's a lot of, I think, discussion around not even gating with like a free trial or a freemium at all, the product, letting people go in there anonymously, use it, play around with it, and if they see the value, then that's when they put in their information and convert. And so I think that's the thing, right? With community, you're going out there and you're building those relationships and talking about, how you can solve these problems, how you can engage with everybody. Product-led growth is also like one of those motions that are brought in there that people can test things out without having that, oh, I have to jump on a sales call and convert right now. So community aspect, I think, is directly related to revenue because you can't force people to buy anymore. You're going out there and you have to educate them. HubSpot, even though, I mean, they have massive community and everything, they use the inbound motion, right? And really define inbound marketing, but they were building a community. They were going out there and they're giving all this stuff away and educating without like a direct ask, like you have to convert right now. And so they've kind of laid a lot of the groundwork for that. And I think community is still such in its infancy when it comes to actually like online and digital and building that out, that things are being defined and we're figuring it all out kind of together. So there is that revenue correlation, but you just have to build it out.
Yeah, I love that. Software is no longer
Sold.
sold; it's
Yeah.
adopted. That
Right.
that right there is just really brings it home for me.
Mm.
I've got two more questions for you.
Okay,
One is,
sure.
how can an organization deploy something like this, and a community-led growth marketing strategy?
Right.
I mean, there's no one better than you guys. You guys actually built the tool
Yeah.
while you built the plane while you flew it.
Right.
And so I talk about walking your walk. And
Yeah.
what's the starting point, and how does this strategy scale?
Yeah, so from just a purely educational standpoint, and I'm not encouraging anybody to go sign up for our platform, even though that'd be great, I'd love it. But just check out Orbit Model. There's no pressure to sign up for anything on Orbit Model. It is the thesis and philosophy behind building out a community and what all those stages are. And it walks you through, defining who defining your community, what your end goals are, and then all the different layers that surround that and all the different activities inside there. So instead of me lecturing, for an hour on this, it's like just check that out. It's free resource. Read it. It'll be really helpful.
You support the National Down Syndrome
I do.
Society. Tell us
Yeah.
about the organization and why you're so passionate about it.
Yeah, so it's really any organization that is supporting individuals with Down syndrome. I'm per like my cousin, who reminds me every single year that she is 9 days older than me, has Down syndrome. And so she's one of my closest cousins. Grew up with her throughout all my life and just saw some of the struggles, though, that she went through, as well as some the amazing person that she is. One thing just about my personal relationship with her is she's the only person that I know that has held the same position for 19 years. And I was just like, that's amazing. And she loves working with children, and that's what she does. So this is a special organization, National Down Syndrome Association, that is helping these individuals, that brings awareness to these special people in this special community. And so that's why I'm a big supporter of it.
Oh, that's fantastic. There's a school here, a friend of mine started for anyone with Down syndrome that can attend full time,
Nice.
and there's not many schools that will
Yeah,
allow you to do that, to go learn, and they teach things like podcasting and
oh,
building websites, and they
that's
give you
amazing.
all the tools, and it's just like an amazing organization that I've
Absolutely.
been involved with here and there, and I just absolutely see the value of things like that. Thank you
Yep,
so much for sharing that,
absolutely.
and for sharing everything here today about
Yep.
community. Because I mean, right into the organizations and associations like that, on into big world-class
Mm,
communities, they all matter. Thank you
yeah.
so much.
No, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, we'll have to talk again. And
Yeah,
thanks
anytime.
everybody for joining Lead Tail TV. We appreciate you. And Andrew, have a wonderful rest of your day and week, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
You too. Take care. Bye bye.